Hi everyone, it's Rachel, and in this video I'm going to be showing you what we received in the Sophie and Toffee dice Elves box, as well as show you how to make some miniature cloud dice and also a large shaker dice as well. So in this box we received a D20 dice mold, a miniature silicone dice mold, 2-part epoxy resin, UV resin, iridescent tinsel, a container of glitter, 2 different liquid pigments, a syringe, a miniature cat and a tree, some fine glitter, and finally this liquid pigment which came as a thank you because this box was actually the November box and we did have to wait a little while due to manufacturing the dice molds. So to begin making my cloud dice, I have taken the miniature dice silicone mold as well as the iridescent tinsel, and I'm going to be using some alcohol ink to colour my UV resin. So I've got some pink and blue as well as some white for the actual cloud part. So here I'm just using my scissors to cut up the iridescent tinsel into smaller pieces, and then I'm using my tweezers to place these randomly inside the mold. Next up, I'm pouring out my UV resin onto 2 sheets of baking paper, and I'm going to be making 2 mixtures. This first one here is of course the blue, and then I also have a pink which I did end up mixing a little bit of purple into just to cool down the pink tone a little. I'm also making a white mixture with a small amount of white alcohol ink, and this is going to be used for the cloud effect. So in one side of the mold, I'm placing my pink UV resin mixture, and then on the other side of the mold, I'm going to be placing my blue UV resin mixture. So these dice are going to be kind of like half and half with the cloud in the middle. So I just gently popped all the bubbles, and then I'm going ahead and adding a small amount of the white mixture into each part as well. It was then time to close up the dice mold, so I quickly flipped it over and I pressed it together, and then I used a rubber band to hold this nice and tight as I cured it under my UV light. I did also want to show you that I originally tried this method using the syringe and pouring the resin in that way through the little holes in the top of the mold, but it just wasn't working for me, so that's why I went for this half and half method that I did here. So here I am popping them out of the mold, and you can see that there are little bits of excess resin, which was fine. So I just carefully trimmed all those off, and then they were ready to go. To clean them up just a little bit more, I'm also using a file, and I'm just filing away all the really rough edges to make them nice and smooth. Then of course dice need numbers, so here I'm using some white acrylic paint and I'm adding this to the piece using my needle tool to get it into the little number crevices, and I'm just using my finger to wipe away any excess paint. So this was just a super simple little craft project, and I really wanted to try out the cloud technique, which is why I made these, and I'm really happy with the way they turned out, and I love the colors and the half and half effect, as well as the white swirly cloud on the inside. Moving on to a little bonus part of the video, here I've got the really large D20 dice mold and my diamond UV resin, and I'm going to be trying to make a shaker dice because I saw a few people making these and filming tutorials on them, and I wanted to see if I could actually get it to work because no one ever really showed the top side of the dice where you had to seal it up, and I wanted to see if I could do that. So here I've just poured some of my UV resin into the dice mold, and you can see that I'm twisting the mold all around so that the resin gets onto all the sides. So I'm hoping that it creates a really nice layer, and then I'm just curing this under my UV light. I then repeated this process 2 more times, so I did it 3 times in total, just to make sure that the resin was nice and thick and I wouldn't have any leaks in my shaker dice or any parts that would be too brittle and break. Then here I'm attempting to create the lid part, so I put a little bit of my resin straight onto this part of the silicone mold, and I'm just covering it to make the triangle kind of shape. I then cured this little piece and I'm pulling it off and then trimming it to size and cutting off all the little excess pieces. Next, I took some shaker oil and I put this inside the dice about halfway before then pouring in my mixture of glitters, which I had chosen and showed right at the start of this part of the video. And I chose these colors because I thought they would match really well with the cloud dice. So I chose lots of pinks and blues. I filled the dice up the rest of the way with the shaker oil and I wiped away the excess before then adding the lid on top of the dice with some UV gel and pressing it down really gently. And here I'm just trying to cover it all up and then I'm curing it under my UV light. I then actually added another layer on top of this to make sure it was nice and secure, but of course in doing this it did take away the number, so I ended up putting the lid back on and holding it on really tight and curing it through the silicone mold so that the number would still be indented on the dice. Here I'm trying my best to demold the dice, which actually worked really well, surprisingly. I did quite enjoy this 3-part mold kind of system. I did have a little bit of oil spillage though, so I'm just cleaning it up with a paper towel and I realized there was a little gap in the top. So I'm trying to seal it up again using some more UV resin and then of course curing this. So here's what the dice looks like once it's out of the mold, and as you can see the top part is not the neatest, but anyway here I'm just cutting away some of the excess resin and then filing it as well like I did with the miniature dice. Because I did add quite a bit of resin to the lid part to keep all the oil and the glitter sealed in, I did have a lot of excess thick resin at the top part, so I'm just filing some of that away the best that I could. Then finally, to finish off this dice, I'm adding the numbers using some white acrylic paint. So here is what the large shaker dice looks like once it's completely finished. I'm actually pretty pleased with how this came out. I think it looks really pretty with the glitter inside and of course the shaker oil. And as you can see, the top part isn't the neatest, but I think if you're going to make this kind of dice anyway, it would be more of a display piece rather than a functional dice. You can see here that I am actually testing it and it does roll. Obviously not as far as a normal dice because it is so heavy, but I think as a display piece, it would look super pretty, and obviously you could have that top part, which isn't so neat, just faced away strategically. So that's everything for this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for lots more crafty videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys.